Welcome to FRIT 7737 School Library Media Practicum Orientation. This brief video will give you an overview of the Practicum experience and will also guide you through our Practicum materials, which are located online. The Practicum Guide, which is what we're going to review today, is located at itechlibrarypracticum.weebly.com. This is a one-stop shop for you. Everything you need to know, all the forms, examples, tools, resources are linked or scripted out on this site. So make sure that you bookmark it and you refer to it as much as possible. During this orientation, we're going to cover the Practicum candidate role and the website, the Practicum forms that you need to know about, candidate expectations, Practicum portfolios, and strategies for success. Once you access the Practicum Guide, which is located at the website that you were given a little bit earlier, you'll notice that there is a page dedicated to the site supervisor. The first time that you meet with your site supervisor, and remember that that is the media specialist at your primary Practicum site, show them this page. It will very clearly explain to them what the expectations are for you during your Practicum, what the expectations are for them as a site supervisor, who they need to contact, any forms that they need to have access to. They will all be listed on this page. And this is a great way to explain the Practicum experience to your site supervisor or to any other person at the school that may want that type of information, for example, a school administrator. The Practicum Candidates page begins with the Code of Ethics forms and materials that the Georgia Professional Standards Commission requires for you to be familiar with. If you're a classroom teacher, then you are probably well versed in some of this material, but it doesn't hurt to review it, so make sure that you access those files. They're easily downloaded from this page. One thing that is very important, and you'll hear me say this many times, if you are not currently employed by a school system, you need to stop right now, go to the forms page, download the graduate field placement request form, fill it out, and send it to your Practicum instructor. Do not delay on this process. Each candidate needs to secure 3 Practicum sites. This is explained to you here, and it also explains to you what forms you need to download and what procedures you need to go through for those. The hours that you need to complete for Practicum total 150. Down here it gives you the Practicum hour formula, which is 10 hours of planning, 90 hours of actual Practicum activities at the schools, and then 50 hours which are taken up by the 5 key assessments that you completed earlier in your program. Those assessments are listed here, so make sure that you have access to those. Finally, at the bottom of this page are frequently asked questions about Practicum and some of the answers that we've provided to help guide you through some of those concerns, so make sure that you review those. In review, secure your Practicum location as soon as possible. Remember, if you're not employed by a Georgia school system right now, you need to come in and complete and turn in the field placement request form to your Practicum instructor. Review that site supervisor webpage on the Practicum Guide website with your site supervisor at the very beginning of your Practicum experience. And make sure you have access to the 5 key assessments listed on the Practicum site. Briefly, the Practicum forms are located on the Practicum forms page. You'll see the field experience form is here. Also, the professional portfolio scoring guide. Whenever we talk about your portfolio, this is the guide that you can look at for how that will be graded. If you are already employed in a school system and you're looking for a way to request a site, here's a Practicum site request email that you can use as a template, just a suggestion. Eventually, whenever your site visit is conducted, the site visit evaluation form is what we will use to evaluate the visit, so you may want to take a look at that. Your site supervisor will need access to the site supervisor feedback form. It is located and available for download right here. And finally, if you're pursuing certification, all that information on that process is located at the bottom of the forms page. The bulk of the information that you need is located on the candidate expectations page. And so I'm going to take a little bit more time going through this part of the Practicum guide. Right here are listed the 5 roles of the library media specialist. Under each role, there are tasks and checklist items that you need to complete. All of these will make up the 90 Practicum hours that are part of the 150 total that you need to complete in order to be able to graduate. So as you go through this page, you will notice that there are very detailed instructions and links to resources that you need to complete each of these activities. And I will just going to scroll through here so that you can see that they're all listed below, and you can use this almost like a checklist to make sure that you are doing everything that you need to be doing. Let me draw your attention here to this part. If you are currently employed as a media specialist, this is where the modifications for you will be listed, so make sure that you review those. When you have scheduled your university supervisor site visit, that will be discussed in this section right here, and your Practicum instructors will also be addressed now a little bit more within Georgia View. And all these activities will be logged on your professional portfolio. However, I want to clarify something for you that may be a little bit confusing. Under each of these roles, you will see that there are, again, checklist items and tasks. The tasks will be on the portfolio itself. That's where you're going to provide evidence of the tasks. For example, your lesson plans, your UBD lesson plans, you would embed those on your portfolio using a tool like Scribd. The checklist items will actually be logged on your blog. Every candidate will maintain a blog, and I will go over that a little bit more in the next section when I talk about the portfolio. But the checklist items will not be within the portfolio themselves. They will be listed on your blog. So just remember that on the portfolio, you are going to provide evidence of the tasks, but on your blog, you will provide evidence of the checklist items. Please make sure that you review this page very carefully and let us know if you have any questions. Moving on to the professional portfolio page, if you scroll down this page, you will notice that it is written almost like a recipe. It tells you exactly what is required, and it even tells you the pages to create and what content should be on each page. So for example, on the home page, you should have a professional picture of yourself, a 2-paragraph biography, and it even breaks down the content of each paragraph, and a table which details the Practicum hours completed for each of the Practicum site locations that you have selected for this semester. If you move on down here to the standards page, it even gives you the standards document for you to use, and then describes the essays that you will be writing for those. Now remember, a little bit earlier I mentioned that your tasks would be embedded on the pages and your checklist items would be on a blog. Here is where that is discussed a little bit further. It talks about your need to create a page for each role, and then it tells you what to embed on those roles. It also explains that there are tools that you can use for doing that, and then tells you what to do to explain those kinds of items to us. Now there are 2 things that you need to have in addition to the portfolio. The first is your personal learning network, and you should have begun developing that throughout the program a little bit earlier. This portion of the page will tell you exactly what your PLN needs to include. And again, if you are already a practicing media specialist, it gives you the modifications that you need to address there in your PLN. Finally, the portfolio will be linked, within the portfolio will be linked your Practicum journal, which is the blog. You're going to be keeping a blog detailing your Practicum experience. It's very important that you pick one day a week to blog. If you wait until the end of the semester, it'll be very difficult to catch up. There are 2 types of posts that are going to go on your blog. The first are posts that detail your checklist items, all the checklist activities that you complete. So, for example, a checklist item is that you attend a meeting, and so somehow, some way, you can document that you attended that meeting. You can either do that with a picture or with an agenda that you embed. Be creative. The other blog post that you will be adding is a weekly journal post telling us about your practicum experience. So every week for the entire practicum experience, you should have one post a week telling us about what's been going on that week, anything interesting that happened, thoughts that you're having, questions that you might be pondering. So remember, you have two different kinds of posts, checklist items and the weekly journal. Because you do have these two different kinds of posts, I encourage you to index your blog posts by using categories. That way it's much easier for us to go through and know what you're talking about. Again, if you are a practicing media specialist, the modifications for the blog are described here as well. Further on, there is the portfolio evaluation information and resources that you can use. And finally, the portfolio presentations, which I will not be covering because Dr. Rettman will create an overview for that, and that will be available towards the end of the semester when we get closer to that time. However, that information is already available for you here if you would like to be a little bit earlier in your review of that information. If you're anything like me, then a visual example is one of the most helpful tools out there. And so if you look under the portfolio examples page of the Practicum guide, you'll notice that we have linked 4 different examples, and they are listed here for you. And you can click on these and they will take you to these portfolios that you can review to see what an actual excellent example of a portfolio would look like. These are done in different tools because we didn't want to favor one tool over the other. We want you to have the freedom to choose the tool that you're most comfortable with. And so you'll notice that some created them in Google Site, some in Weebly, some use PBWiki, and there are other tools even that you might want to explore. These are listed below. We have some links here of the 4 most favorite tools that candidates tend to use. Some have used Wix in the past. We discourage you from using that tool because Wix can be very problematic and buggy, and we've had a lot of issues with Wix. So I discourage you from using Wix. But any of these other tools should be wonderful and give you the power to do any and everything that you need to do for your portfolio. In review, I want to highlight the most important things to remember. Read over all those candidate expectation and portfolio content requirements and that you are familiar with those and you understand those. If you don't, please ask. Remember that your key assessments will be in your portfolio, so you need to have access to those. And the task item evidence will also be placed on your portfolio. However, the checklist item evidence will be on your portfolio journal on the blog. Set aside a dedicated weekly time for blogging so that you aren't caught at the end of the semester having to recreate 15 weeks worth of practicum experience. And choose the portfolio tool you are most comfortable with. We really do not have a preference as long as you are able to complete the requirements necessary for a strong portfolio. Finally, all the due dates for the portfolio are listed in your syllabus. Please make sure that you are tracking those due dates and that you are working on your portfolio throughout the semester and not waiting until the last week, because that could really place you in a tight spot. So make sure that you're following those due dates and that you are carefully completing what is required for each individual due date on the portfolio. Finally, just some strategies for success in Practicum. Carefully review the Practicum website over and over again. And if you need any clarification, please post questions on the discussion boards in Georgia View. If you have a question, most likely another candidate will have the same question. Speaking of Georgia View, make sure that you check into your course frequently. Even though there aren't weekly discussions per se like other courses in this degree plan, it's very important that you're always looking to see if there's any new information or resources or updates and announcements that other candidates and the instructor are providing for you. Make arrangements for your practicum placement as early as possible. If you haven't done so already, please contact your practicum instructor immediately. You will be coordinating your site visit using the appropriate tools, and those will be discussed a little bit later here in a couple of weeks within Georgia View. Observe all the practicum due dates on your syllabus. And work on your portfolio and blog every day. Make sure you have a couple of days that you've set aside for the portfolio and one day that you've set aside for the blog. We can't wait to see what you have in store this semester, and we are really looking forward to working with you. Welcome to FRIT 7737 Practicum.